Simple and plain. To be the best, you have to win. That's why I play the game.
So with the latest signings of Rajon Rondo and DeAndre Jordan, who's also set to join the Lakers, the Los Angeles Lakers offseason is pretty much done with, right? I mean, we do have another roster spot still remaining, but I think the Los Angeles Lakers will essentially hold on to that last remaining spot and see what accumulates throughout the season. You know, every season we see a lot of players get bought out by their teams around the trade deadline, and it just adds to the flexibility that the Lakers can do, you know, in case we get some injuries throughout the season, we can just bring another guy in to help fix that problem. But fingers crossed that we get no injuries. But in terms of this video, I've mentioned in a couple of my other videos that I think this is one of the best off seasons that the Lakers have had in recent times. But what we're going to do in this video is go through each off season move and grade them and essentially just further assess what the Lakers have been able to do coming into next season. And remember guys, this is just my opinion. You know, you guys might have a completely different opinion than I do, and that's alright, because at the end of the day we're just talking some Lakers basketball. But before we get started, what I'd like you to do is comment down below what was your favorite move that the Lakers made this offseason. Comment down below right now. And first and foremost, let's talk about some of the guys that we shipped out to essentially bring in Russell Westbrook. And let's talk about Kyle Kuzma first. And straight up, I'm going to give this move an A for both sides. And firstly, from the Los Angeles Lakers perspective, we're moving on a player who's been a little bit inconsistent over the past couple of seasons, especially since the arrival of Anthony Davis. And in saying that, I kind of feel a little bit sorry for him, because before Anthony Davis arrived, he was the one player that played really well alongside LeBron James, and that's essentially why the Lakers wanted to keep Kuzma in that trade. But when Anthony Davis arrived, Kuzma was obviously pushed back to the bench and really just couldn't find a consistent role on this team. And every time he went out there on the court, he felt really rushed to me and almost as if he was trying too hard. You know, he did try hard out there on the field, especially defensively. You know, he was getting up in guys' faces, knocking down shots, but then it sort of looked like he was trying too hard, trying to push the pace too much, and that would lead to some inconsistencies and some turnovers, and he didn't really find his rhythm in the end. And then in the playoffs against the Phoenix Suns, when Anthony Davis went down, he was the one player who I looked at to say, alright, it's your time to step up now, this is your moment, and it just didn't end up happening. So that's why I'm going to give this one an A for both sides of the equation, because now Kyle Kuzma, who's probably going to start for the Wizards, can work on his game and really develop it and really start to show some consistency in this league, and I wish him all the best. Another player who was part of that Russell Westbrook trade was Montrezl Harrell, and again, I'm going to give this move an A. And to be quite honest, I wasn't a fan of bringing Montrezl Harrell into the Lakers system in the first place, because I just don't think he has the tools to make this team more successful than it was before. You know, he's more of a player that can come off the bench and really dominate the second unit, because he's going to out-hustle everyone, whereas other players on the other team might not play as hard as Montrezl Harrell does every single night. So he's great against those second unit centers because he's so quick, he can get around them and essentially just rim run the whole game. But when you get into the playoffs and teams are playing their starting centers for the majority of the game, and he's coming up against guys like DeAndre Ayton, Jokic, these guys who are much bigger than him, you pretty much can't have him out on the floor just because he's only 6'7", and he can't really put a body on these bigger centers, not to mention that he's not much of a good defender in the first place. So you can only really play him for about 10 minutes in the playoffs, and when you're paying a player $10 million who's only going to give you 10 minutes in the playoffs, is it really worth it in the end? And that's essentially what happened. In some games, Montrezl Harrell wasn't even able to get any minutes out there on the floor in the playoffs, just due to the fact that you simply couldn't play him due to the matchups that were available. And when you compare Montrezl Harrell to Dwight Howard, who the Lakers now have, they're pretty similar players in the sense that they're not able to knock down shots and stretch the floor as much, so they rely on their intensity. But then you have a guy in Dwight Howard who's like 7 foot, who really has the ability to hang with these big guys, especially in the playoffs when you're coming up against the Jokic of the world, the Joel Embiids of the world, the DeAndre Aytons of the world, whereas Montrezl Harrell's only 6'7", and as we spoke about, isn't the best defender in the world. And when you're paying Montrezl Harrell $10 million and Dwight Howard the veteran minimum, and Dwight Howard's going to do more for you in the playoffs, you know, it's a pretty simple choice when you think of it like that. So as I said, I'm going to give this move an A. Moving on to the last player who was involved in this trade in KCP. And look, I kind of feel sorry for KCP because, you know, he's been loyal to the Lakers for the past couple of years and played well and was a huge part of us winning a championship. And let's not forget, I think it was Game 4 against Miami Heat in that final series. Miami Heat was making a massive run, and then KCP, in the clutch moments of that game, hits a massive three-point shot from the corner, and then 1 or 2 possessions later makes a tough drive to the rim and lays it up over 2 or 3 Miami Heat defenders and really turned the tide of that game in our favor. And I kind of think this trade's more about the other players on our team, as we spoke about the Kuzmas, the Schroders, the Montrezl Harrells, who really didn't perform in the playoffs. And I think KCP sort of got caught in the crossfire a little bit in this trade, and it's tough. It's tough, KCP, but at the end of the day, I guess that's just how the NBA works. And I think the Los Angeles Lakers just realized in order for this trade to get done, they really had to include KCP, even though they probably would have liked to have kept him. But in terms of ranking this move, I'm going to give this move a B, because when we get rid of KCP, we lose a great wing defender and probably our best wing defender, up there with Alex Caruso, in my opinion. And we get rid of our best three-point shooter as well, and a guy who really knows how to play alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and who had a great career with the Los Angeles Lakers. But as we discussed, we needed to include KCP to ultimately get Russell Westbrook, which is going to be beneficial for this Los Angeles Lakers season. Moving on to a player who we just mentioned, Alex Caruso, the Caruso, the GOAT of LA. I'm going to have to give this move a C. I was so sad to see Alex Caruso go, but I think at the end of the day, the Los Angeles Lakers had to make a decision here. Do we keep THT and continue to develop his game, or do we keep Alex Caruso, who's been one of the shining lights for the Los Angeles Lakers over the past couple of seasons, and who, in my opinion, was our best defender alongside the likes of Anthony Davis. And out of all the guys that were surrounding LeBron James and Anthony Davis, Caruso was probably the best player in terms of role players that fit in well with those guys. But ultimately, if we were to keep Alex Caruso, the Lakers would have had to match that offer from the Bulls, which is around 10 point something a season, and for multiple seasons at that. And I just think when the Lakers looked at the guys that they were bringing in, Kendrick Nunn, Malik Monk, and those guys who came in on much lesser contracts, I just think the front office at the Lakers really liked the versatility that they were bringing in, and ultimately just wanted to save a bit of money at the end of the day. But again, Alex Caruso is one of my favorite players to watch in the league, and he'll always be a Laker in my opinion, and I wish him all the best over there at the Chicago Bulls, who I think will have a pretty good season this year as well. Moving on to a player in Dennis Schroder, who the Lakers thought would be the future at the point guard position for this franchise after making a trade for him at the start of last season. And look, at the end of the day, things just didn't work out. I mean, we traded for Schroder with the hope that he can come in and be the secondary ball handler behind LeBron James and take a little bit of pressure off LeBron James at that, but he just wasn't the playmaker that we thought he was, and he was just so inconsistent in the playoffs and wasn't able to bring to the table what we expected of him. And as we all know, the Lakers offered him a pretty substantial contract, which he would eventually turn down, and in hindsight, it's probably a good thing for the Lakers that he did turn down that contract, because overall, it just wasn't working out. So in terms of moving on Dennis Schroder, I'm going to give this move an A. Moving on to some players that the Lakers actually brought in this season, and let's start with a player in Kendrick Nunn, and I'm going to give this move an A+, and I've spoken about why I think this is my favorite move of the offseason in many of my other videos, because I just think that Kendrick Nunn is the perfect backup point guard for this team, because not only is he a starting quality player in this league, he gives you the full package offensively. I mean, he can create his own shot, drive to the rim effectively, and also has an underrated passing game that's going to be very valuable coming off the bench for the Los Angeles Lakers. And again, that's just something we didn't have last season. Guys that can come off the bench and really score the ball and make other players better around them, while still having a solid presence on the defensive end as well. So for me, this move is definitely an A+. Moving on to another young player that the Lakers brought in, Malik Monk, and I'm going to give this move an A, because not only is he a young player, He's a young player with a lot of potential. I mean, this is a young player who can also be a great defender at times and has an athletic body that really helps him on those sides of things as well, and also helps him attack the rim with ferocity. And he's a player who's shown that he has the capabilities of knocking down that three-point shot and that mid-range shot as well at a high clip. And again, this is definitely an upgrade compared to what we had last year in terms of scoring the ball. And Malik Monk's going to come off the bench or possibly even start at that 2 guard and really help on the offensive end and the defensive end as well. So definitely I'm ranking this move an A. Moving on to a player in Wayne Ellington, and I'm going to rank this move an A as well, because when you add the addition of Russell Westbrook, there's no doubt that you have to add some three-point shooting, and Wayne Ellington has proven to be one of the best three-point shooters throughout the entirety of his NBA career, and he's going to come in as a very valuable piece to this Los Angeles Lakers roster. And there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to get some shots, some wide open shots that he's never seen before in his career, with the playmaking of the likes of Russell Westbrook and LeBron James getting him the ball. And I'm expecting Wayne Ellington to knock down at least a couple of three-pointers every single night for the Los Angeles Lakers, which are going to be very handy in terms of the Lakers winning regular season games and playoff games. So again, I'm going to rate this move an A. Moving on to another player in Kent Bazemore, and I'm going to give this move a B+. And this is one of the cats in the running for that starting shooting guard position, and it makes sense, right? Because between him and Trevor Ariza, they're both players who are probably our best wing defenders on this roster. And when you look around the rest of the league, there's a lot of solid shooting guards and small forwards that can really light you up. So it's important to have solid defenders in those wing positions, and Kent Bazemore can definitely bring that to the table because he's so lengthy and versatile. He can really guard those wing attacking players, and he's going to be a solid all-round player all year for the Los Angeles Lakers. So that's why I'm ranking this move as a B+. And then moving on to a player who we just mentioned, Trevor Ariza, and I'm going to rate this move as a B, because he can pretty much do what Kent Bazemore does, although he's a little bit older, so he may not be able to move as well as he used to on the defensive end, although he's still going to be a solid defender, which he can chuck on those players like the Paul Georges, the Kawhi Leonard, those real good wing players, and he can do a solid job whilst also being a threat from the three-point line. Moving on to a player who's the Los Angeles Lakers' youngest prospect, Talen Horton-Tucker, THT, and which we all know that the Los Angeles Lakers retain this offseason, and I'm going to give this move an A, because alongside a lot of Lakers fans out there, I truly believe that the ceiling for Talen Horton-Tucker is an all-star in this league, and we got to remember that he's only 20 years old, and that's important when you have so many older guys, more experienced guys on this roster. It's important to have those young guys still, which you can develop and can learn from these older guys, and that's exactly what Talen Horton-Tucker is going to do this season. He's going to continue to develop his game underneath these guys, which are superstars in our league, and I just can't wait to see him take that next step this season, get some more playing time, and really show us what he's made of. So overall, this move's an A for me. Moving on to some centers that the Lakers acquired this offseason, and first of all, let's start with our newest Laker, DeAndre Jordan. And to be quite honest, look, I'm going to rate this move a D on the fact that I would have liked to have seen the Lakers pick up, a young center in a Harry Giles or a Marquez Chris, or even a DeMarcus Cousins, who have the ability to, knock down a couple of mid-range shots or even a three-point shot. And I get why the Lakers went after a player like DeAndre Jordan. It's because they want that consistency at the center position, and they want to add to the experience and also have a player who's a great rebounder and sort of good defender at this stage of his career. But for me personally, I would have rathered the Lakers go after, a young big man who they can really bring into this system and really develop his game alongside the likes of Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard. A young player who's shown potential in this league, who can learn off these guys and really start to make a name for himself. And that way the Lakers can have a young prospect at the center position, which they can continue to develop for the future of this franchise, just like they've done with Talen Horton-Tucker. But look, at the end of the day, I'm sure DeAndre Jordan's going to do a solid job for the Lakers this season, but overall, I'm going to rate this move a D. Moving on to another center, which we acquired, Dwight Howard. and I'm going to rate this move an A because I think we really missed Dwight Howard last season because he just brings, a good camaraderie to the group as well. He's always having fun on the sidelines and stuff like that and building chemistry on and off the court, and then on the court he's able to defend at a higher level, grab rebounds, and really be a solid option in terms of lob passes. He sets hard screens for shooters to roll off and knock down shots, and he's just an overall, a great presence out there on the Lakers, and I'm pretty excited to see him back in the purple and gold. Let's just pray that he can dull down those technical fouls because he tends to give away a lot of technical fouls, but I guess that's just the nature of his character. But for this move, as I said, I'm going to give it an A. Moving on to our final 3 off-season moves, and let's start with Carmelo Anthony. And again, I'm going to rate this move an A just because I think he can bring so much scoring off the bench or even in the starting squad and really light it up for the Lakers. When some of our superstars may not have it going, he's an elite scorer still in my opinion and can really sometimes still even take over the offense and provide a great scoring punch for the Los Angeles Lakers. And there's no doubt in my mind he's going to be a player that we turn to in those crunch moments throughout the playoffs because we know that we can trust that Carmelo Anthony is still going to be able to knock down some big time shots, which he's very much still capable of doing because he's shown it throughout the entirety of his career. So again, I'm going to rate this move an A. Moving on to the final 2 off-season moves, and let's start with Rajon Rondo. And again, I'm going to rate this move an A because he's just going to bring so much experience to the table in that backup point guard position alongside Kendrick Nunn. And he's going to be able to, show Kendrick Nunn, Malik Monk, Talen Horton-Tucker, the ins and outs of the game, both on the defensive end and the offensive end, and he's going to be one of those locker room guys that we can bring in when it really matters throughout games as well, especially in the playoffs because his IQ is still off the charts, and his vision combined with Russell Westbrook and LeBron James is just, going to send this team's playmaking off the charts, and we're going to be a very smart team out there, and Rondo's definitely going to contribute to that. So again, I'm going to rate this move an A. Moving on to our final off-season move, and of course, it's Russell Westbrook, and I'm going to rate this move an A. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Russell Westbrook and him coming to the Lakers, and a lot of negative talk from the naysayers out there, and I absolutely love it because I just can't wait for Russell Westbrook to go out there and prove so many people wrong. And of course, we know what he's going to bring to the table, that intensity, that ferociousness, and that great IQ, that great playmaking, that dunking. He's really the complete package besides lacking a little bit of shooting. But again, that's only one part of the game, and when you have so much talent out there on the floor like the Lakers will have this season, the sky's the limit really. And I just really think what Russell Westbrook brings to the table is really going to help elevate the rest of this team and really fire us up heading into this season, and that's going to help us build that camaraderie and build that will to win and that will to go out there every single night and give it 110% for the Laker fans all around the world. But that's pretty much it, guys. I hope I haven't forgotten any players, but here's a little summary of how I've graded each off-season move. And as you can see, there's a lot of A's and B's there, and that's quite simply because I generally think that they're actually pretty good moves. I'm not just going to rate moves C's and D's just for the sake of the video. But now it's your turn. Let me know in the comments, do you agree with how I've graded the Lakers off-season moves? Let me know your thoughts in the comments right now. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. If you are liking the content, be sure to subscribe to the Lakers exclusive YouTube channel. But for now, it's been your boy Jay. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.